A little while ago, I spoke to Texas Senator Ted Cruz about life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and the State of the Union. Please take a listen. All right, with great pleasure, we welcome back to the show Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. Mr. Cruz, welcome, sir. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the key points in the State of the Union. One of the more interesting ones is President Biden kind of forgot to talk about permitting reform that might help the oil and gas industry, or for that matter, mining resources to help electric vehicle batteries and so forth. He said there's 10 years left for fossil fuels and, in general, kind of dissed the whole industry, attacked big oil, wants to tax them. What do you make of all that? I mean, do you think he just forgot? There's no olive branch there.
No, look, I think the Biden White House has handed their policy agenda over to the radical left in the Democrat Party, and that's on every issue. On immigration, it's the open borders radicals that set the policy. On law and order, it's the abolish the police and George Soros prosecutor radicals that set the policy. And on energy, it's the radical environmental activists, the Green New Deal loony left, who's setting the policy. Look, these are the same people that are wanting to ban gas stoves, take the stove out of your kitchen. Joe Biden, when he campaigned in 2020, he told the voters, if you elect me, he said, I will stop drilling onshore and offshore in the United States. And Joe Biden, since he became president, has consistently waged a war on U.S. energy production, U.S. oil and gas production. He has hammered producers, shutting off drilling onshore, shutting off drilling offshore, refusing to issue permits, slow-walking pipelines, canceling the Keystone Pipeline, and in particular, going after the capital behind exploration. So his banking regulators have had deep hostility to debt financing for oil and gas exploration, and his SEC regulators have had deep hostility to equity financing for oil and gas exploration. If you can't get debt and you can't get equity, it ain't complicated to know that there's no capital going to new American exploration. And then the State of the Union, it was really striking because he said, well, gosh, they're saying our policies are making people unwilling to invest capital. And that's when he had this comment, we'll need oil and gas for at least a decade. And I got to tell you, on the floor of the House, there were audible peals of laughter because it's so utterly disconnected. I don't know what Joe Biden thinks. In 10 years, suddenly jet airplanes are no longer going to run on jet fuel. You're going to put, what, a windmill on the nose of the plane? It is loony, and it is not only hammering jobs in the United States, it is driving inflation, it is driving up the cost of everything, and the Biden policies are hurting the environment because we're shifting production to foreign producers that are our enemies that produce in a much dirtier way.
In general, the State of the Union, you look at this thing, he's spewing out regulations on everything, left and right. At one point, he wants to regulate, what did he say, resorts? And then he said they're not really resorts. I don't know, Motel 6. He wants to regulate fees. He wants to regulate cell phones. He wants to regulate fiber optics. He wants to regulate baggage. I mean, this really is a kind of modern socialism. You don't buy the state doesn't buy the factories anymore. All they do is use central planning and regulations to control the whole economy. And what I heard in the State of the Union, get your take on it, was, I don't know, more of the same. 2 more years. He wants 4 more years after that. This is, Hayek wrote to serfdom socialism.
Yeah. Listen, I thought the State of the Union speech, I thought it was angry. I thought it was divisive. I thought it was really out of touch. And it was also profoundly dishonest. He said multiple things in the speech that were just wildly dishonest. He called on Congress, give me the funding so I can finally secure the border. Once again, there were peals of laughter from the floor of the House because, number one, the Biden administration has fought against funding for securing the border from day one. Number two, It's not ultimately a funding problem. It is a policy decision Joe Biden made his first week in office. At the same time he was canceling the Keystone Pipeline, he was also ordering his administration to stop building the wall. He was reinstating catch and release, and he was pulling out of the Remain in Mexico agreement, which is what caused this crisis. Likewise, when he later tried to demagogue and say that Republicans want to sunset Social Security and Medicare. And that was laughingly wrong. Again, people could not help but laughing at the dishonesty of it, because he knows he's lying. He knows he is directly lying when he says that. No Republican wants to end Social Security or Medicare. Every Republican is committed to strengthening Social Security and Medicare as critical programs that our seniors have relied on. And the irony of that deception, look, it's not new that Democrats scaremonger and accuse Republicans of wanting to throw Granny off the cliff. What is new, though, is the policies of the Biden administration for the last 2 years. There is no group in America that has been more hurt by the Biden administration policies than seniors, as they've seen inflation galloping. Seniors on fixed incomes see the cost of rent going up, food, electricity, health care, gasoline, everything going up at the same time that their retirement savings have dropped 20 and 30%. And so seniors have been hammered. So when he pledged he's going to defend seniors, I'll tell you the best way he can defend seniors is to get his administration out of office, because their policies are hurting seniors badly.
Last one, Senator. If Senator Ted Cruz could wave a magic wand, what would you put into the spending cut package or spending reform package that's going to accompany the debt ceiling? What would you recommend? It's kind of like a continuing resolution. It's a new CR. What would you recommend? Where would you recommend that McCarthy and company go?
Well, as you know, there are going to be two battles, both of which are likely to play out this summer. One is the battle over the debt ceiling. The other is the battle over either a continuing resolution or appropriations bills. And I think the answer to those two are different. On the appropriations, what the House has said it's going to do is take up separate appropriations bills and pass separate appropriations bills. I think that's exactly right. Now, I fully expect Chuck Schumer and the Democrats not to want to do separate appropriation bills, particularly any that reflect real fiscal discipline, that stop the out-of-control spending that is causing inflation that's hurting so many Americans. So we're going to see a showdown, and I think the House has the greater leverage, but you're going to see Joe Biden and the Democrats trying to get everything crammed into a giant omnibus that continues the irresponsible spending. On the debt ceiling, my view is not that we shouldn't raise the debt ceiling. I don't think that's a responsible position unless you're prepared to have immediate and massive spending cuts, which no one in Congress is willing to do. My position has always been that we should use the debt ceiling and raising it as leverage to enact real and meaningful structural reforms to fix the problem, or at least to make real progress on the out-of-control spending. And if you look historically, the debt ceiling has been the most effective lever for meaningful reforms. You look back to 2010, the Budget Control Act was passed by Congress on the debt ceiling, saying we're not going to raise it unless you pass the Budget Control Act, which resulted in trillions in savings as a result. You look before that to Graham-Rudman. Graham-Rudman was the most significant structural fiscal restraint legislation of our lifetimes. Graham-Rudman was passed by using the debt ceiling. And so I think we should use that leverage. It's going to be the House in the first instance negotiating with the president. And I'll say Biden started with the proposition he was not going to negotiate at all. His position was hell no. He wasn't even going to talk. I'm glad to see Biden has already been forced to back away from that objectively unreasonable position. He's sitting down now with House leadership and beginning negotiations, and I'm hopeful we will make real progress stopping this irresponsible spending.
Although he didn't mention any of that in the State of the Union
Not a word.
Speech. So I think some people are probably pretty disappointed. Just last one. Why do you think it is that sort of like a Biden derangement syndrome, He always, the rich don't pay their fair share. Businesses don't pay their fair share. We got to tax everybody. And as you know, I mean, the top 1% of taxpayers already pay nearly half of all the tax revenues going to the Fed. It's just like let's punish success. He's got to put it in every major speech. He's out there in Wisconsin. He's out there in Florida saying, what is it about this guy that he does not understand how the world works and why rewarding success and rewarding work is so important? That's the last 30 seconds. I know it's a loaded question. It just drives me crazy.
Well, look, sadly, it's the pattern of socialists and Marxists across the world, which is Biden relies on rhetoric to say we're just going to tax the millionaires and billionaires. That's where all the magic money is going to come from. You know, I'm reminded of John Dillinger when he was asked, why do you rob banks? His answer was, that's where the money is. What does Biden want to do? What he has done, which is go after the middle class. Why? Because that's where the money is. And the Biden policies have hammered the middle class. And the way these socialists pay for their policies is imposing new taxes, new fees on the middle class. It's why Biden wants 87,000 new IRS agents to go after the middle class. It's why they're going after Venmo transactions, to go after you and to go after the middle class across America. It's why the Biden administration wanted every financial transaction with your bank under $600 reported to the federal government, because they are coming after the middle class and they're promising you it's just the billionaires.
Just the billionaires.
That ain't the truth.
You know, I wish, if I had one wish in life, I know Joe Biden, going back many years, you know, I say, Mr. President, it's those evil businesses that hire people and pay their wages. I mean, he just said. Anyway, Senator Ted Cruz, thank you for your time, sir. We appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Larry.